Chapter 1. I need to start with the hardest part, because if I don't do it now, the shame will swallow me whole before I manage to tell the entire truth. It was me. I was the one who made the call. I was the one who paid. I was the one who turned his love into a laboratory experiment. As if feelings could be measured with a thermometer and a hidden camera. Every time I sit down to write this, my hand freezes and my chest tightens, as if my whole body knows I'm confessing a crime that has no penal code but absolutely should. There's no law against destroying the trust of someone who loved you, but there should be. I remember the first time I thought about doing it. It was on a Tuesday night, one of those ordinary ones, with him on the couch watching some series I wasn't paying attention to, and me with my phone in hand, scrolling the screen without really seeing anything. We were fine. At least that's what it looked like. But there was an itch inside me, a raspy voice that whispered, "What if he's lying?" And the whole screen lit up red inside me. I knew it was wrong. You know when you buy a new padlock for a door that already has a lock? That's what it was. I was trying to lock up something that was already safe, but the fear of being robbed was stronger than the safety itself. And the worst part, I thought I was being intelligent, cautious, responsible. I thought I was protecting myself. When I typed loyalty test on Google, it was as if every cell in my body screamed. But the logic of pain is stronger than the logic of reason, and pain always screams louder. I wanted to see if he would resist. I wanted proof. I wanted numbers and evidence, as if love were a spreadsheet. But the truth that hurts to admit, is that I wanted to feel in control, because control is the only medicine that works when you've already been betrayed before. Except control is also poison, and poison always kills something. You can judge me now, and maybe you should, because what came after was a hell I personally invited in, opened the door for, served coffee to, and asked to stay. Chapter 2. Before everything fell apart, we had a life that could fit inside a magazine photo. You know those mornings that smell like fresh coffee and warm bread popping out of the toaster? That was our kitchen. We had the wedding registry stuck to the fridge with a silly heart-shaped magnet. The names of the bridesmaids and groomsmen written in pencil because we still weren't sure who to invite. And that warm feeling that the future was so close you could almost touch it. Felipe was the kind of man who carried all the grocery bags without complaining, even when they were so heavy they cut into his hands. He remembered to buy the shampoo I liked, the expensive one I always complained about but secretly adored. He kissed my forehead before leaving for work every single day, like a sacred ritual, like someone marking territory without being possessive. He was gentle in a way that seemed natural, not forced, as if taking care of me was as obvious as breathing. My mother adored him. My friends envied me, in that quiet way, with smiles that say, "You got lucky," and I knew I had. At least my mind knew. But my body, my chest, my breathing, none of them knew anything, because there was something in him that unsettled me. Not something obvious, nothing I could point at and say, "Look, this is wrong." There were no hidden messages, no strange calls, no suspicious excuses. It was subtler. It was his calm. That constant, unshakable calmness that made me think of a lake that's too still. Beautiful, inviting, but deep. And deep lakes hide things. I know the problem wasn't him. I know it was me, dragging ghosts from my past relationship like carry-on luggage I refused to check in. My ex had destroyed me with lies so well-crafted that I still confuse fairy tales with horror movie scripts. He would say, "I love you," looking straight into my eyes with that deep voice that melted any defense I had, while texting someone else behind my back. He planned our future out loud while erasing evidence of his present in silence. When you're deceived like that, something inside you cracks. Not a full break, but a fracture, like a windshield hit by a rock. You can glue the pieces back together, pretend it's whole, but the cracks remain. And through those cracks, fear slips in and settles permanently. Felipe said, "I love you, relax," with that calm voice that should have soothed me, but only made me more tense. And I believed him halfway, like someone who checks the door lock twice before sleeping, even knowing it's already locked. I wanted to believe him, I swear I did, but trauma doesn't ask permission to enter. It just sits on your living room couch, puts its feet on your table, and stays. I looked at our wedding rings, tucked in the velvet box on top of the dresser, and a poisonous whisper echoed. What if it's too good to be true? I watched him sleeping on his side, one arm over the pillow, breathing slowly, and a voice inside me asked, "What if he's just waiting for the right moment to destroy you?" I didn't want to lose what we had, but the fear of losing was already running the show, sitting in the captain's chair, making decisions in place of reason. And fear, I would learn too late, is the worst counselor there is. Chapter 3. It was on an ordinary Thursday, the kind that shouldn't become a milestone in anyone's life, when things really began to crack. It was 7 in the evening. I was sitting on the couch, still wearing my work clothes, exhausted with that kind of tiredness that sticks to your bones, when my phone buzzed on the coffee table, a message from him. "I'll be home later, the meeting ran long." That was it, a simple sentence, a half-hearted laughing emoji, nothing unusual. Any normal, healthy, confident person would have replied, "Okay, I'll wait for you, kiss," and moved on with their night. Turned on the TV, ordered food, took a shower, slept peacefully. But I'm not that person, not anymore. I am someone who carries invisible war scars, the kind no one sees but burn when the weather changes. And that Thursday, the weather changed. My stomach twisted. Not dramatically, not like in a movie with suspense music and slow motion. Just a dry, sudden tightening rising from my gut and choking my throat. That internal siren blaring, "Careful, you've seen this movie before, you know how it ends." I know, rationally, that meetings run late. I know things come up, bosses exist, demanding clients ignore schedules, traffic jams happen, life is unpredictable. I know all that, but trauma does not follow logic. Trauma follows patterns. And the pattern my body had memorized was simple and cruel. Vague message equals lie. I sat on the couch for 2 hours with the phone in my hand, refreshing his location on the app. Yes, we shared locations because I had asked for it, just for safety. He was at the office. Still. The little blue dot didn't move. What should have reassured me only made me more nervous. What if he left the phone there and went somewhere else? What if he was with someone? What if... Every passing minute, my mind wrote a new script, each version more elaborate than the one before. He was with a coworker. He was lying about the meeting. He was just like my ex, only better at hiding it. He had waited for me to let my guard down, waited for the wedding to get close, so he could finally show who he really was. I know it sounds like madness. I know. But when you've been deceived before, when you've believed promises that turn to dust, your brain learns to protect itself by crafting disaster scenarios. It's a defense mechanism. It's survival, but it's also a prison. When he finally arrived at 10:30 that night, with that genuine, tired face of someone who had a long day, I forced a smile that hurt the corners of my mouth and asked, "Everything okay?" My voice sounded strange, too high-pitched, fake even to myself. He kissed my forehead, that same ritual, always, and said, "Sorry for the delay, awful meeting," then went straight to take a shower. He didn't suspect a thing, didn't notice I was on the edge of a silent meltdown. And it was right then, hearing the water hitting the glass shower box, that I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and typed the words that would change everything. Loyalty test. Dozens of results appeared. Professional websites, discreet ads, profiles of actresses specialized in testing relationships discreetly and safely, as if love were a scientific experiment with a control group. As if betrayal were a hypothesis to be confirmed with method. I clicked one link, then another, and another. I spent half an hour reading testimonials from women who had done it, who had discovered cheating before marriage, who had escaped false relationships in time. They spoke like heroines, like survivors, as if they had saved themselves from a predicted disaster. And a voice inside me, one that sounded rational but was pure fear disguised, asked, "Why can't I do the same? Why do I have to wait to be betrayed again? Why do I have to be the idiot who trusts until the end and regrets it later?" That's when I found her profile. Professional photo, discreet but attractive. Straight dark hair, confident but not provocative smile. A description that sounded almost corporate. Actress specialized in discreet, personalized loyalty tests. Absolute confidentiality guaranteed. Complete report with photos and videos. I saved the number. Didn't call right away, but I saved it. Like someone keeping a fire extinguisher under the sink, just in case, even without smoke. I called it caution so I wouldn't have to call it paranoia. Called it protecting myself so I wouldn't admit it was destruction. Called it guarantee so I wouldn't face the fact it was sabotage. But deep down, deep where truth lives and we pretend not to see, I already knew. I had just signed a contract with shame. Chapter 4. The next day, I woke up with the feeling that I had done something wrong, even though I hadn't actually done anything yet. It's funny how guilt arrives before the crime, as if the body already knows you're about to cross a line you shouldn't. I spent the entire morning convincing myself that I was overreacting. Real love doesn't need a test, I repeated to myself as I stared at the saved number on my phone. You trust him. You love him. This is madness! But the voice of fear was louder, and the voice of fear said, better to prevent than suffer again. I called her at 2 p.m. Her voice was calm, professional, like someone answering a regular office client, not a woman on the verge of an emotional collapse. How does it work? I asked, trying to sound casual, like I was just requesting information about some ordinary service. She explained, I'll meet him at a place you choose. I'll start a conversation, show interest, see how far he goes. You'll receive photos, videos, and a full report. Everything discreet, everything documented. It sounded simple. It sounded safe. It sounded like the perfect solution for my fear. And if he doesn't take the bait? I asked, my voice thin. Then you get the peace you need, she replied. Peace. That's what I needed, right? Peace, certainty, assurance. I gave her all the details. I told her where he usually goes after work, the bar he likes, the type of drink he orders, even the way he tilts his head when he's curious. I heard myself talking and it sounded like I was a detective, or worse, a spy infiltrated in my own relationship. When I hung up, my hand was shaking, not out of fear of what he might do, but out of fear of what I had already done. Shame came like a fever, fast, hot, inevitable. I had just paid someone to seduce the man I loved. I had turned our relationship into a reality show. I had put a camera over our love and called it precaution. But I had already pressed send, and messages, just like bullets, don't come back. I wanted to believe it would just be a scare, a test he would pass easily, and then I would laugh at myself afterward, and we would move on happily. I just didn't imagine the scare would be with me. And the laughter would never come. Chapter 5. There are memories we carry whole, complete, as if they were filmed in high definition and stored in a box, immune to time. Our first time together is one of those. And it hurts. It hurts so much because we never know, when we're living the best days, that they'll become the most painful ones to remember. It was an October Saturday, the kind that starts gray and ends in a storm. I was coming back from a job interview that had been a disaster, the kind you leave wanting to cry, but you hold yourself together because you're still out in public. I had just gotten out of a relationship that left me hollow inside, like a house without furniture. And I was in that phase where you wake up every day and have to remind your own body how to move. The bus passed right by my stop without stopping. I saw the driver ignore me. I ran, I shouted, but he was already gone. And that's when the rain began. Not that thin drizzle you can tolerate. This was a flood, a biblical punishment, the kind of rain that feels intentional, as if the universe had decided I hadn't suffered enough yet. I stood there, under a pathetic awning that protected nothing, hugging myself as if that could create some barrier against the cold, against the water, against the feeling that everything was falling apart. My hair was already soaked, mascara running, clothes clinging to my body, and that childish urge to sit on the ground and give up on everything. That's when he appeared. He walked out of a store with a brown paper bag in one hand and a gray coat draped over his arm. He was dry, warm, protected. He could have kept walking like any normal person does when they see a stranger drenched in the rain. But he stopped. He looked at me for 2 seconds, one of those looks that assess the situation and make a quick decision, and without saying a word, he took the coat from his arm and placed it over my shoulders. The coat was heavy, warm, smelled like soap, and something I couldn't identify but found comforting. I felt its weight fall over me like a blanket, like protection, like a gesture nobody had offered me in months. And for one stupid second, I thought I was going to collapse right there in front of him, cry out of sheer relief from such unexpected kindness. "You're going to get pneumonia," he said with a crooked, embarrassed smile, as if he had done something wrong instead of something right, as if kindness were an intrusion and he was apologizing. I couldn't react, completely speechless. Because strangers don't do that. Strangers don't stop in the rain, remove their own coat, and decide you deserve to be protected. "We don't know each other," I said, more a statement than a refusal, my voice still trembling from the cold. "I know," he replied, and his smile grew wider, more genuine. "But it looks like I recognize that tired courage on your face." Tired courage. No one had ever described how I felt with so much precision. No one had ever looked at me, soaked, broken, and seen courage instead of failure. "Would you like a coffee?" he asked, pointing toward a small cafe on the corner. "Just to warm up. No commitment, no small talk, just coffee." I should have said no. I should have thanked him, given back his coat, waited for the next bus, and continued with my life. But I didn't say no. I said yes, and it was the best decision I made, until it became the worst. We sat in that tiny cafe with the smell of freshly brewed coffee and warm bread that sticks to the roof of your mouth. He ordered 2 coffees and a slice of cake we ended up sharing without hesitation. And we talked. Talked like we already knew each other. Like it wasn't the first time. Like the universe had delayed that meeting for years and was now making up for it. He told me he worked in graphic design, lived alone since he was 20, and had a weird relationship with plants because he always forgot to water them. I told him about the job I didn't get, the feeling of drifting, how sometimes I woke up not knowing exactly who I was anymore. And he didn't look at me with pity. He looked at me with recognition. Our beginning was simple, almost silly. Pizza on the couch 2 days later, a movie we didn't finish because we talked until 3 in the morning, laughter without reason, silences that didn't feel heavy. He said my name, Anna, just that, in a way that made it sound like music, like it had always been beautiful, even though I never liked it. It was with him that I learned love doesn't need to hurt to be real. That care can be a small gesture repeated every day, without audience, without proof. That safety doesn't come from grand promises written across the sky, but from steady presence, from a hand that holds, from a coat that warms. That's why it hurts so much to tell the rest, because what came after wasn't just a test gone wrong. It was the coat becoming a memory that burns, the rain turning into the soundtrack of a tragedy, the beginning becoming the cruel contrast to the end. If I could go back, I would return to that Saturday, to that bus stop, to that rain. I would accept the coat, accept the coffee, accept the love, and stop right there. No contracts, no cameras, no fear dressed as precaution. But we can't go back. We only carry forward. And I carry that gray coat as an invisible scar that weighs more than any fabric ever did. Chapter 6, the night of the test arrived the same way all nights arrive. Slowly, inevitably, without asking permission. She had been at the bar since 7:30, sitting in a strategic corner, her hair down over her shoulders, red lipstick that drew attention without shouting, and that aura of someone who knows exactly the effect she has. I was watching everything through the photos she sent every 5 minutes, and each photo felt like a countdown. He arrived at exactly 8, as always, punctual even when walking into a trap. He ordered sparkling water, checked his phone, replied to a message, probably mine, saying everything was fine, that I had eaten dinner, that he could stay out as long as he wanted. She approached him. Subtle. Professional. She asked for a lighter for a cigarette that didn't even light, a detail I hadn't asked for, but it worked. He said he didn't smoke, but still offered to help. In that gentle way he treats everyone, even strangers. "Can I buy you a drink?" she asked, wearing the exact smile I had approved in her photo. He smiled back, polite, but shook his head. "No, thank you. I'm just waiting for the night to pass." I almost sighed in relief. Almost. Because in that moment he was behaving exactly as I expected. Gentle, faithful, steady. But then he did something that froze me. He pulled out a chair, sat beside her, leaned his body in, like someone about to share a secret, and said, looking straight into her eyes, "There's something about you that reminds me of someone." My skin erupted in goosebumps. My breath stopped. My heart sped up so violently it felt like it would burst out of my mouth. What was he doing? She replied something I couldn't even process because my brain was screaming louder than any audio recording. They talked more, laughed. He paid her bill. He paid her bill. As if it were a date. As if it were intentional. And then he said, "Let's talk somewhere quieter." They both stood up, together, and left the bar. I saw everything through the camera. I saw the elevator doors closing slowly like tired eyelids. I saw the long, cold hotel hallway. I saw the door opening, and I felt the world collapse inside me, silently. Chapter 7. What happens in a hotel corridor when you're on the other side of a screen is slow torture, timed, frame by frame, second by second, and you can't pause, can't turn it off, can't close your eyes. You can only watch. I was in the car, parked 2 blocks from the hotel, my phone propped on the dashboard. The screen glowing with that cold light that hurts your eyes but you can't look away from. The live feed came from the discreet camera she carried inside her purse, the angle slightly tilted but enough to see everything, enough to see too much. The corridor lights were that harsh hospital white, cold, cruel, exposing everything, leaving nothing hidden. The kind of light that doesn't forgive flaws, stains on the worn carpet, scratches on the beige wall, cracks in the ceiling that no one had ever fixed. And I felt that light exposing me too, every crack in my sanity. Their footsteps echoed. Not hurried footsteps. Not the kind of steps taken by someone running or sneaking. They were normal steps, almost slow, as if they were simply walking, talking, existing, and that was worse, because rushed betrayal can be blamed on impulse, on weakness. But calm betrayal, measured betrayal, that feels like choice. I heard everything through the open audio feed, just like we'd planned. The metallic sound of their steps on the ceramic floor, her breathing, slightly fast, his silence, heavy, controlled, and somewhere far off, the muffled noise of a TV in another room, a door slamming, life happening normally while mine collapsed in slow motion. My hands were sweating so much the phone almost slipped. I gripped it harder, my nails digging into the plastic case. My breathing was uneven, shallow, as if I had run a marathon, but I was still, completely still. Only my heart was racing, pounding so loudly I heard it in my ears like an internal drum screaming, "Stop, stop, stop." But I couldn't stop. I couldn't. Because stopping felt worse, because not knowing felt worse than seeing the worst. Or at least that's what I believed. They stopped in front of a door. Room 407. I saw the silver numbers attached to the dark wooden frame, numbers that mean nothing until they mean everything. 407. I repeated it in my mind, as if memorizing it mattered, as if I needed physical proof of what I was about to witness. My stomach crashed like an elevator with its cables cut when he slid the keycard into the lock. That electronic beep, that tiny green light granting access, that mechanical click that opens the door and seals fate. I typed on WhatsApp, my hand shaking so badly I mistyped 3 times before getting it right. "If it gets weird, stop." She replied almost immediately. "Okay." No okay had ever carried so much weight. The door opened. Through the shaky camera, I saw the inside of the room. Queen bed, crisp white sheets stretched too tightly, the bedside lamp casting a warm yellow circle, closed curtains, the air conditioner humming softly. Everything terribly normal. Terribly generic, terribly real. They entered, both of them, together. And the door closed behind them with a soft click that sounded like a verdict. Then everything became too quiet. No footsteps, no voices, only a dense, suffocating silence that filled the room, seeped through the screen, and settled over me inside the car, 2 blocks away. A silence that physically hurt, like pressure in the ears, like drowning, like a vacuum pulling all the air from my lungs. My watch marked the seconds. Each tick was a scream. Tick, It's over. Talk. It's over. Tick. It's over. I wanted to turn it off, throw the phone out the window, start the car, drive, vanish, disappear, undo everything. But I also wanted to see, needed to see. Because I had convinced myself that doubt hurts more than truth. 5 seconds of silence, 10, 20, 30. Each second was an eternity. Each second my mind created a new image. Them kissing, undressing, on the bed, destroying everything we had built with invisible touches my imagination projected in high definition. I was crying and didn't even notice. Hot tears sliding down my face, blurring my vision, falling onto my lap. I wiped them away angrily, as if crying were weakness, as if feeling were failure. Then the phone rang. Strong vibration, her name on the screen. My heart stopped. Truly stopped for a fraction of a second, as if my entire body gave up before I did. I answered, my hand shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. Hello? My voice came out cracked, thin, strangled. He asked to talk to you. Her voice was trembling too, filled with something I couldn't identify. Fear? Confusion? Pity? Secondhand shame? My stomach plunged in a freefall without a cable. What do you mean? I could barely form the words. Then I heard his voice in the background, calm, controlled, terrifyingly clear. She pulled the phone away from her ear, and I heard everything, every word, every pause, every blade-like syllable. In that hotel hallway, room 407, I stopped being a fiancé and became the audience of my own ruin, and learned there are things worse than being cheated on, being the person who set up the betrayal and invited it in. Chapter 8. The actress called me with a trembling voice, the kind you use when you've just seen something you shouldn't have. He asked to talk to you, she said, each word falling like a stone. Now, I answered with a throat so dry it hurt to swallow. My hand shook so much the phone nearly slipped from my fingers. I expected her to scream, to panic, to confirm the disaster. But what came instead was worse. Silence. What happened? I asked, my voice thin, almost disappearing. She took a deep breath, the kind someone takes when they need courage to recount something painful even to remember. We walked into the room. He closed the door, but he didn't lock it. He stood there, didn't say anything for a few seconds. I thought he was going to, I don't know, do something. But he just stood there, in front of the mirror. The mirror? Yes. He looked at me through the reflection. Didn't look at me directly, only through the mirror. Like he was seeing through me. Like I wasn't real. And then he spoke. My heart raced so violently, I heard the pulse pounding inside my ears. What did he say? She paused. A pause too long, too heavy. And before she spoke, I already knew. Whatever came next would destroy me. He said, "You can call her now. I know she's watching. Tell her I wanted to see how far she would go to destroy what we had." The world stopped. Not in a poetic way. Not like in a soap opera, with dramatic music and spinning cameras. It stopped brutally, abruptly, like a car crash where everything freezes before the pain arrives. Like a fall where, just for an instant, you don't feel the impact yet, but you already know it will hurt. He knew. My voice shattered in the middle. He knew, the whole time, since the bar, maybe earlier. He knew. She continued, and every word was a shard of glass cutting deeper. He left the room key on the table, room 407, placed it there, in the center, like evidence, like a museum piece. And then he looked at me, for the last time, and said, "You can go. Thank you for participating in her test." And him? He left, without touching me, without kissing me, without doing anything. He just opened the door and walked out. As if I were a ghost. As if none of it mattered. I heard the door closing over the phone. That dry, final click that sounds like a coffin lid. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice small, almost childlike. I didn't know I didn't know anything. If I had known, I wouldn't have. I hung up. Not because I blamed her, but because I had no words, no air, no emotional structure left to continue that conversation. I sat there, in my car parked 2 blocks away, holding my phone with an empty chest, completely empty, as if someone had reached inside and removed everything: heart, lungs, hope. It wasn't betrayal, not in the traditional sense. There was no stolen kiss, no clothes on the floor, no messy bed, no scene worthy of tabloid headlines. But there was something worse. Much worse. There was the naked, brutal proof that I had dismantled love piece by piece and placed a camera over it, thinking that was protection. The mirror. He stared at me through the mirror. He didn't look at her. He looked at me, through her, as if I were in that room, invisible, watching. And I was watching. I had paid to watch. Room key 407 stayed on that table, and I never saw it in person, but it lives in my mind as a symbol, as a marker, as a number that became a sentence. 407. The room where love didn't die from betrayal, but from suspicion. He hadn't betrayed me with his body, with desire, with a cheap hotel bed. He had done something that hurts infinitely more. He made me see who I had become, and what I saw was terrible. I saw a woman who loved with fear instead of love, who protected with surveillance instead of trust, who tested instead of believing, who set traps and called it care. I understood, far too late, that the test had changed targets. It wasn't about him and temptation anymore. It wasn't about male fidelity or resisting desire. It was about me, about my buried faith, about my inability to love without a guard, and I had failed. He passed. I was the one who failed. I don't know how long I stayed there. Could have been 10 minutes. Could have been an hour. Time had stopped mattering. There was only a vast emptiness, a crater inside me, and an echo of a sentence that would never leave my mind. I wanted to see how far she'd go to destroy what we had. And the answer, cruel and honest, and was all the way. I went all the way. Chapter 9. He arrived home 2 hours later. I was still on the living room floor, sitting cross-legged with an empty mind, like someone waking up from anesthesia, still unable to feel their whole body. I heard the key turning in the lock, heard his footsteps entering slowly, heard the sound of his backpack being placed near the door, and then silence. He stopped at the entrance of the living room and looked at me, not with anger, not with hurt, just with that look of someone who already knows the verdict and is simply waiting for the sentence to be read out loud. "Hi," I said, my voice thin and broken, as if it had rusted from staying silent too long. He didn't answer. He just walked to the couch and sat on the edge, his hands between his knees, eyes fixed on the floor. "You wanted proof," he finally said, his voice too calm for the size of the destruction. "There it is. But the one who needed testing was you." That sentence hung in the air like smoke that refuses to leave, that clings to walls, to lungs, making it impossible to breathe properly. I tried to say I'm sorry, but the word died halfway, because one word can't possibly cover a hole the size of what I had dug. "I didn't touch her," he continued, still without looking at me. "I didn't kiss her. I didn't do anything you're imagining. But you already knew that, didn't you? Because the test was never about what I might do. It was about how far you would go." I wanted to scream that I was scared, that I just wanted certainty, that my ex had destroyed me and I couldn't trust anyone anymore, not even myself. But none of those excuses had enough weight to stop what was collapsing. "I love you," I said, and it sounded pathetic even to my own ears. He finally looked at me, and it was worse than if he had yelled. Because what I saw in his eyes wasn't hatred, it was exhaustion, it was goodbye. "I loved you too," he said, in the past tense, and each letter of that sentence fell like a stone. There was no fight, no broken plates, no slamming doors, no soap opera shouting, just a heavy, dense silence that filled every corner of the house as if it were another character. He stood up, picked up his backpack, and went to the guest room. Closed the door without locking it, as if even that no longer mattered. I stayed there, alone, sitting on the floor of a house that no longer felt like ours. And I understood that some pains are too deep for even tears to reach. That night, our home became a suitcase that doesn't close anymore, full of things that don't fit, don't match, and only weigh you down. Chapter 10. The following days were a blur, a blue screen crash, frozen images, and a silence that hurts more than screaming. He left early, came back late, and we shared the same space, like two ghosts brushing past each other without truly seeing. There was no more good morning, no more goodbye kiss, no more wedding list stuck on the fridge, only emptiness. And emptiness is loud, even when it makes no sound. I spent hours, entire days, watching the recordings, pausing frame by frame, like someone searching for continuity errors in a movie, hoping to find something that would absolve me. A gesture from him showing bad intention, a side glance, a hidden lie, anything to turn the guilt into a tie. But there wasn't anything. There was only a man tired of being monitored. A man who resisted temptation, but couldn't resist suspicion. A man who passed the test and still lost. Watching those images reminded me of my ex. The lies. The betrayals. The nights I stayed awake checking his phone, building theories, assembling a puzzle of infidelity with pieces that didn't always fit. My body had learned to survive by staying on high alert, like a soldier in a war zone. And when the war ended, the alert remained. Except now, with no real enemy, I started shooting at the person standing beside me. I didn't test Felipe. I tested my wound. I pressed my finger into the scar just to see if it still hurt. And it did. Of course it did. But this time, the pain didn't come from the outside. It came from within. I thought of 1,000 excuses. I thought of blaming the actress, fate, his excessive calm, my ex, my insecurity, the whole world. But in the end, when the noise inside my head quieted down, only the mirror remained standing. And in the mirror, I saw the truth no one wants to see. I was the one who broke. It was that night, alone in the dark, the blue glow of the screen marking my face like a scar, when I understood something. Wanting to love is not the same as knowing how to love, and watching someone is not protecting them. It's suffocating them. I cried without an audience, without a soundtrack, without any beauty, just me, the weight, and the shame. Chapter 11. I felt anger, a lot of it. Anger at him, for being so calm that my insecurity found room to grow. Anger at the actress, for agreeing to participate. Anger at my ex, for planting fear where trust once lived. Anger at myself, for letting fear become a rule book. I thought about revenge. I thought about exposing everything, telling everyone he had entered a hotel room with another woman, leaving out the part about the key left on the table, rewriting the story so I could come out as the victim. It would have been easy, natural even. After all, who asks for details when the headline is already good enough? But the anger faded. Not all at once, not overnight, but slowly. Like a fever dropping after the body finally understands fighting is pointless. And when the anger left, something worse remained: responsibility. I sat at the kitchen table with a blank sheet of paper and a pen that failed 3 times before it wrote. And I wrote, without drafts, without corrections, just letting it all out. Felipe, I could ask for forgiveness, but one word doesn't cover the size of what I did. I could explain myself, but explanations don't change the fact that I turned love into a laboratory. I could say it was fear, trauma, insecurity, and it was all of that. But it doesn't change that I made a choice. I chose not to trust. I chose surveillance instead of love. I chose to break instead of build. You passed the test. I'm the one who failed. And because of that, I will cancel the wedding. Not to punish you, but because it would be a lie to move forward pretending this never happened. And I've lied enough, even if the lies were to myself. You deserve someone who loves you without cameras, who trusts without proof, who stays without needing guarantees. And I need to learn how to be that person before I promise to be her for someone else. I'm sorry isn't enough, but it's all I have. I really am sorry. I folded the letter, placed it with the rings inside a small box, and left it on the living room table. I called my family, told them everything, endured the disappointed looks, the questions without answers, the repeated, "But he didn't cheat on you?" As if betrayal only exists with a body, a kiss, a bed. Love died of something else, I replied, and left it at that. That week, I began learning how to be alone without a police siren in my chest, without internal alarms, without needing a test to know the ground beneath me was solid. It was hard, but it was a beginning. Chapter 12. 2 weeks later, I scheduled a coffee with the actress. Not out of anger, not for confrontation, but because there was something I needed to say. She arrived before me, already sitting by the window, scrolling on her phone with that unsure air of someone who doesn't know if they should be there. When she saw me, she raised her hand slowly, almost timidly, as if apologizing just with the gesture. I sat across from her, ordered a coffee I knew I wouldn't drink, and we stayed silent for a few seconds, the sound of the cafe filling the space. "I'm really sorry," she said before I could start. "Really? I didn't know that you two would." "I know," I interrupted gently. "It wasn't you. It was me." She blinked, surprised, as if she expected an explosion but got a sigh instead. "I hired you to do a job, and you did it. You even stopped when you could have gone further. And that was also a choice. So I came here to thank you." "Thank me," she repeated, confused. "For stopping the scene before it went too far. For calling me. For not turning that moment into something irreversible." She relaxed her shoulders, as if an invisible weight had been lifted. "I just wanted you to know," I continued, "that the problem was never you. It was my fear, dressed up as the perfect plan. It was me thinking love needed surveillance when, in truth, love needs air." She nodded slowly, and we both breathed in at the same pace, like two people who had just crossed a dangerous bridge and were relieved it was over. I left that cafe with a new sentence echoing in my mind, one I wish I had heard before hitting send. Trust cannot be measured with a trap, because love being watched dies of shame. I went back home, which was now only mine, since he had moved out 3 days earlier, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel heaviness. I felt lightness. Not happiness, not yet, but something close. Honesty. And honesty weighs less than lies. Always. Chapter 13. It was on a Saturday morning, almost a month after everything, that I picked up the scissors. It wasn't a dramatic decision, wasn't a crisis, wasn't a cinematic rebirth attempt. It was just an impulse. Simple, from someone who looks at the mirror and realizes the frame no longer matches the painting. I cut my hair to shoulder length. No salon, no professional, just me, the bathroom mirror, and the kitchen scissors that weren't ideal but did the job. Each cut felt like a small restart. Each strand falling to the floor was a piece of weight I didn't need to carry anymore. It wasn't about beauty, it was about choice. About doing something just because I wanted to, without asking for opinions, without needing approval, without fear of the outcome. Then I opened all the windows in the house. Let the wind come in, cold and strong, bringing with it the smell of rain, the noise of the street, life happening outside. I went to the computer, opened the folder with the recordings, and without thinking too much, without drama, I dragged everything to the trash. Emptied the trash. No backup, no just in case, no voice whispering, "What if you need this someday?" I wouldn't need it. Because some things don't deserve a second screen, a second chance to hurt, a second round. Some things need to be deleted so we can write again. I sat on the sofa, my hair still damp from the quick wash, the house filled with wind, and felt something strange. For the first time in months, I was actually breathing. If someone asks me what happened, I'll tell the truth. Not the edited version, not the sensationalized headline. Just the simple, harsh truth. I went to hell on my own. And came back without the old fear. I learned the difference between protecting and watching. Between loving and controlling. Between wanting guarantees and accepting that love, by nature, is a risk that comes with no manual. And I also learned that trauma isn't an excuse to hurt those around us. It's explanation, context, real pain, but not a license. Felipe taught me that without meaning to. He passed the loyalty test, but he failed me on the trust test, and his failure saved me. Because sometimes losing is the only way we learn what we never should have risked. Ending today. When I look back, I no longer feel that burning shame. I feel something different. Understanding. I understand the girl who hired the actress. I understand her fear, her half-healed scar, her desperate need to control the uncontrollable. But understanding is not the same as justifying. Love didn't die because he walked into a hotel room. It died because I put a camera where faith should have been. And if I could go back, I wouldn't return to change what he did. I would go back to change what I did. I'd go back to that bus stop, accept the wet coat, and leave my fear at home, locked away, no spare key. But we don't go back. We only move forward, and I'm moving forward. More slowly, more carefully, but without cameras, without tests, without needing proof to believe that some things in life are worth the risk. My hair is growing back, the windows remain open. Shame has become learning. And if one day I love again, it will be without contracts, without hidden cameras, without fear disguised as caution. Because I learned, in the most painful way possible, that love under surveillance is not love, it's prison. For both.